maybe you use both, but maybe you emphasize whole language or phonics more. Okay, but the whole idea is that what we really want to do is make sure we have a balanced literacy approach, right? Because both aspects, right, taking a bottom-up approach and a top-down approach are very important. Okay, and a lot of times when I look at programs, they're very much focused on, the phonics or these bottom-up skills to decode the language, and not necessarily enough with the whole language, right? Or the top-down strategies for making meaning from text. Okay, so I have here some helpful building blocks, and I don't have that much time left, so I'm going to be kind of going through them rather quickly. Okay, but I did want to say that the first one that I'm going to point out is what I see definitely, a part of EFL, Young Learner Instruction, which is explicit instruction in phonics. That is one part of a balanced literacy approach. It is very important, right? Students need bottom-up skills to decode and spell words, especially English has 26 letters, representing 44 sounds with more than 500 ways to spell them. Can you imagine? Okay, English is not so easy to learn. So phonics instruction, it also can differ depending on the writing system and your literacy practices, right? So if you actually, are a Chinese speaker or Arabic speaker, right, you use a completely different writing system. So it really is dependent on the native language. Okay, so I don't get into telling people exactly how to give phonics instruction because sometimes that depends on your native language and where you come from. Okay, I do want to say that I'll start with the top-down approach, okay, because I do see this bottom-up approach a lot. And one thing you absolutely have to do for young learners is to immerse them in print and literature. Okay, so you want to make sure that they're surrounded by print in their environment, there's print on the walls in the environment, and also that you're making a variety of texts available, right? Like picture books, okay, and all different types of texts. Okay, so if you're able to create, okay, in your classroom, print on the walls, and having reading centers where students can sit and choose books and read, very important. So you want to immerse students in print and literature. Another thing that you want to make sure you're doing is to utilize and build students' background knowledge. So one is utilize their background knowledge. The other is to build their background knowledge to understand text because they're very young and may not be exposed to a lot in the world. So you want to tap into their prior experience. You might be connecting to content, right, like science or social studies, making those cross-curricular connections, and also building their cultural knowledge to read stories across cultures. Okay, so you might start with like familiar books, right, such as like The Three Pigs or like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? These are very familiar. And then you might also be connecting to content areas, right? So they're learning about different animals, so you might want to be connecting them to the different animals and reading them stories that are related to the animals that they're learning about, okay? And also building cultural information as well, okay? So when you're learning about things like, okay, maybe you're doing a unit on toys and you're going to read a story about toys. You might also want to build their content knowledge about toys that come from other cultures. This is actually a big book that comes from our world. And, we present in here in this big book, facts about dolls, toys in other countries. So you can see here from Russia, okay, and from India, okay, and from Central America. So we want to build their content knowledge, cross-curricular knowledge, as well as culture through reading. All right, so next, we want to make sure we're modeling various reading and writing strategies. Okay, so we want to make sure that students are able to recognize text structure and are previewing the text and examining the surrounding pictures and predicting what's happening next. right? We want them to also be able to write for a particular audience and purpose and pay attention to that. So of course, when you are reading stories, you want them to always remember, and you start them out with previewing the text. What do you see here? Ah, a frog. What color is the frog? Mhm. Is this frog big or little? Okay, and then you can see the title is A Big Lesson for Little Frog. All right, so previewing it, you can even take them through the pictures in the text without reading it, and at first just preview the pictures and say, what animals do you see in here? And students can try to guess what's going to happen next. All right, so we want to model these various strategies all the time. Okay, now moving on. Another very important point, building vocabulary and automaticity of high frequency words. Okay, something that research tells us, research by Paul Nation tells us that readers need to know at least 95 to 98% of the words in a text to gain comprehension independently. That is virtually all the words. Okay, and so it's very difficult. Now that is to gain comprehension of text independently. That is why you as a teacher will be doing things like shared reading and helping students gain comprehension of text. But when you want to encourage them to read independently, you need to prepare them for it. And also provide them with books, right? So the books that I have in my book series, Our World, all of the books are actually connected with a unit in the book series in Our World. And so therefore, the vocabulary words used, the majority of the words in the storybook are from the unit, right, in the student book. And so what we're trying to do is provide a context that's fun and interesting for students to be able to gain comprehension of text. And then when we do the shared reading, we're helping them to build reading strategies to make meaning from the text, right? And then hopefully to be able to read it independently later. Now, you may know this, but the 100 most frequently used words in the English language actually represent 50% of all written text. That's all. Okay? And most of the books, right, that have been written for children, especially in our series, for example, use these frequently used words. Okay? So one way that you can help your students read better is to build that automatic recognition of the words. Okay, so for example, they have these lists like the Fry sight words. Okay, these are the first most frequently used 100 words. If students can recognize them automatically, right, just with flashcards, then they're going to be able to recognize so much of the text that's in the books that you give them. All right, so keeping all this in mind, of course, when you are trying to build a balanced literacy program, you always have to come back to looking at your young learners, right? And our young learners, they're active learners and thinkers, they're social learners, and so you have to make sure that they're actively involved in the learning process with literacy, okay? And we know that they need scaffolding from you, right? We just talked about that, right? That the teacher needs to be able to assist students through shared reading, right? By helping to make the input comprehensible in order to help them to become independent readers.